Okay, preparing to live stream. Okay, how are we doing? I'm on the Lark's Facebook on my like laptop, like my personal one. So I'm just gonna, let's see. I hope the thing that happened yesterday doesn't happen again, you know?
No, I don't. What happened yesterday?
The endless loop of
Oh,
Zooms.
oh, right. Yes, that was perilous.
Okay, so we are on the thing. There we are. Look, it's us.
Hello. Hello, Facebook.
Cool. So maybe we just give it a couple minutes and
Okay.
see if anybody joins us. But if not, we'll just get going.
Okay.
Um, Share.
Share. Is that an okay introduction, or are we going to get in trouble because I don't have the rights?
I don't know. I don't know if we're gonna get in trouble. Ooh, Nikki breaks Nikki breaks Stella. Say hi to Nikki. There's a big
Hi!
oh
So
my
great.
goodness. Oh my goodness. So do you wanna get started? Should we do
Yeah.
um like a hi, my name is Jennifer. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the communications manager at the Lark, and I'm here with Nora. You want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Nora Bridget Monahan. My pronouns are they, them. I am currently the Director of Development at the Lark. Welcome. This is Nora's guide to kicking ass and applying for grants. I started this last year with Jennifer Haley and Olivia George um, and the communications team and fundraising team at the Lark. At the very beginning of COVID, folks were asking a lot about how do I get emergency funding? How do I supplement for all of the lost income in the arts sector? And so we did a couple of Facebook Lives and talked folks through opportunities. And then Jennifer and the wonderful fundraising team here at the Lark, Adam and Annika, um, had the great idea that we would continue it as a monthly blog series. So we've been doing that since the spring. And now I'm happy to be back here to talk through a couple of upcoming opportunities and answer your questions. So thanks, Jennifer, for putting this together, for having me.
Thanks so much for doing this. I'm going to turn my video off, but I'll be here if people have questions and stuff. I'll be looking in the comments and I'll chat them to you, Nora. But otherwise, this show is all yours.
Oh, good. Oh, good. You're all in trouble now. So this is how I'm going to structure this video. And if you're watching this after the fact, Jennifer and I were just talking, we'll include like timestamps either on the blog or on Facebook. However, Jennifer, the magician of this, will figure it out. So here are the things I'm going to cover. First, I'm just going to talk very quickly about 3 upcoming grant opportunities. They're all for project funding. Then I'm going to talk again very briefly about personal support if you're looking for it right now. It's still a global pandemic. And then there are a lot of opportunities right now, though, as arts organizations are trying to get back on their feet. There are a lot of opportunities for project funding right now. I'll talk a little bit about where to look if you have a project you're trying to support. Then I'll talk a little bit about fiscal sponsorship, which is when you partner with a nonprofit, with an organization. And then the last thing I plan on doing is talking about where does the money come from? if that's something that you're interested in. And if there are any other questions that folks have along the way, please comment them on Facebook, and Jennifer will message them to me and I will answer them as best as I can. So, like I said, Nora's Guide to Kicking Ass and Applying for Grants is a monthly blog series on the Lark's website. And we had one that we posted in August, and at least 2 of those that were shared in that one, the deadlines are coming up this week. And so I wanted to quickly remind everybody. One is LMCC. So if you're in New York, these first 2 are for New York specifically. LMCC is the Lower Manhattan Cultural Council. And that one is due September 14th. That's up to $9,000 in project support. And it is, LMCC provides a lot of funding to independent and smaller theater companies, but also they provide funding for all disciplines of the arts, not just theater. And then another one, which is also New York specific, but not Manhattan, is the Brooklyn Arts Fund. That one is due a week from today. That's due on September 17th. And that is up to $5,000 in project support. So you can find the links and the descriptions about those in August's Nora's Guide, which is on the Lark blog right now. And then here's one that is rolling. Right now, they're currently rolling through December 13th. And then my understanding is that they sort of fundraise again until they have enough in the fund to launch another cycle. So this is through December 13th. Right now, this is the Foundation for Contemporary Arts. These are emergency grants, but they're not the emergency grants like I talked about last year, where it's personal emergencies. These are emergency last minute project support. So if you have an opportunity to perform, if you get one of those things that we all know and love and dread getting, where you get that call that's, we have a performance slot and, you're on, if you can get it together and you have 3 weeks to do it, but you don't have the funds assembled, you can reach out to Foundation for Contemporary Arts. You can apply and they grant $500 to $3,000 in support, to help you get your project seen at the last minute. The average grant, according to their website, is $1,700. So that's helpful to keep in mind. And they do get a lot more requests than they can fund. They get almost 100 requests per month. And my understanding is that they're only able to fund about 15% of those. 15, just in case my diction was unclear, 15%. But, still worth applying, still worth going out for if you have that kind of opportunity come up. And now I just want to, like I said, because it is still a global pandemic, a lot of us are still unemployed in the arts, don't have the opportunities that we expected to have. And also the unemployment, plus ups have ended in almost every state now. So it's a really challenging moment. If you are in the arts, the first 2 places that I would encourage you to reach out to and look to for personal support, if you are in a union, the first thing I'm going to say always is call your union. There's a unions used to be something that were very robust and strong, and everyone who was in the union knew that they could rely on them and reach out to them in times when they were struggling as well. But now we're sort of disconnected from unions. So you might think of Actors Equity as that thing you have to join in order to get seen, on the day if you show up to an equity open call, or, SAG-AFTRA, that's that thing that you have to pay union dues to once a year, twice a year. But they're there to support you and look out for your interests as a member of that union. So call your union, talk to your union rep. There are, in addition to opportunities that they may have and may be able to connect you to, they often are connected to foundations. SAG-AFTRA has its own foundation. And then Actors Equity is connected to the next place I'll tell you to call. But also they have a lot of partnerships with other organizations, including companies, for-profit companies. So if you're struggling, trying to find access to something, if there's something in particular that you need, call them and they might say, okay, so we have for your car insurance, you can get a 20% union discount. You call your car insurer, tell them that you're a member, and maybe that can lower your car payment cost every month. So your union, unions are great. Let's go back to restoring power to unions and to turning to our unions for help. And then the next place I'll say, if you're in the theater at all, you don't just have to be an actor, like it says in the name, call the Actors Fund. The Actors Fund is an amazing organization, and anyone in the theater is someone who they are going to support and try to connect with opportunities. They have emergency funding opportunities for your personal needs. They have places that they can direct you for direct services. So if you're still looking for personal support right now, as so many people are, those are the first two places I'm going to recommend. If you are a union member, call your union, and that includes guilds too. If you're in the Dramatist Guild, if you're in the Writers Guild, the Directors Guild, then there's SDC for directors, stage directors, and choreographers. And if you're not in any of those unions, or if you are, I would also say call the Actors Fund. Okay, any questions coming in yet, Jennifer? I feel like I am talking very, very fast. Okay, great. So I'll move on. Lots of emojis. Thank you, comrades. Thank you for the emojis. Next, I'm going to talk about project support. So here we are. Most of us are still here after all of this chaos and pandemic that we've endured since March of 2020. And we got through the period of time where there simply was no access to live theater. We Zoomed for as long as we could stand it. And now many organizations and artists are trying to get back in doing live and in-person programming. So if you have a project that you're looking to support, or one that you are thinking of, and you want to research grants, which is a great way to fund it. Something that I remember, when I was younger, is I thought, oh, okay, you have to, I want to put on my play. I'm going to have to Kickstarter, GoFundMe, Indiegogo, and just ask everybody I know on social media for $25 to help me make this happen. That's not a valid way to go. Mutual aid is wonderful. Tapping into your networks is wonderful, but also take advantage of the funds that are out there to support you in the work that you're doing, because it's important and valuable to society. So how to research grants. The basic and worst answer is Google it. Or any other search engine. I'm not endorsing Google as a corporation. But where do you start? What to Google first? You can Google, arts grants. You can Google funding for theater productions, arts grants near me. But there are so many. There are so many opportunities that it's sometimes really overwhelming, and then really hard to find something, because then suddenly you're looking through and you see, oh, this is a playwriting grant. How exciting. Oh, it is only for writers in Anchorage, Alaska. Now I've spent all of this time looking into that, and it doesn't even apply to me. Or, you're looking in one that's in your neighborhood. You think, oh, this is perfect. Oh, it's only for pottery, and you're not a potter. So, that's not useful to you. The first thing that I would Google is arts councils. Are arts councils. Almost every city, county, state in the US has an arts council. So I would look up where you are, type in the name of your city, your state, your county, and look up the arts council near you. See what opportunities they have. There is local funding. We are not, unfortunately, in a country that has a really robust, cultural and humanities investment from the state, but there is money out there. And the thing about it is not everyone knows to look. It also does depend on where you are a little bit, but sort of contrary to the way you might expect. I was down about 3 weeks ago in Washington, D.C., meeting with the fabulous Rita Maydell at the National Endowment for the Arts. And Wida is a program specialist in theater down there, and she's really helped and supported the Lark. Um, oh my God, I'm describing all of your feelings exactly. I know it's really, really hard to navigate just how much there is out there. Um, but so anyway, Wida and I were talking about the NEA, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the way in which funding is often distributed on a government level throughout the US. And I ran into this last year when there was the, let's see, what was first? The CARES Act. And there was money allocated for the NEA by Congress as part of the first COVID stimulus package. And, then that was dispersed to the states, and it was meant to help nonprofit arts organizations like the Lark. We applied, and we didn't get it. And, the Lark is an amazing organization with an amazing artistic community and an amazing development staff. And so, I was disappointed. But something that I learned that at first I was frustrated by is that the NEA, and as part of that bill, the money was spread out over all 50 states. So if you're in New York, where there is a huge density of arts nonprofits, you were vastly less likely to get funded than if you were an arts organization in Montana or Wyoming, where there was a much greater likelihood that you would get funding because there was way more funding available to you per organization than there is in the US. Than there is in New York. Now, with some time and reflection on that, though that was frustrating as a New York-based nonprofit director of development, I think it's really valuable because something that it does is it also guarantees that there is arts funding in organizations that are not seen as like centers of the arts. There's a huge centralization of artistic life in the US in New York and LA. But the arts and artists live all over and all deserve funding and the ability to manifest their art and realize their artistic visions. So it's really great and important, I think, that all 50 states and the US territories, so if you're in Guam, if you're in Puerto Rico, that there is arts funding specifically allocated to the government in your area by the federal government. So I would start with arts councils. And you can look them up. You can see what opportunities they have now, and you can call or write and ask about the opportunities. But here's another thing I want to talk through that is an amazing resource that is much more helpful in my experience than Google. So this is called the Foundation Directory Online. There's an organization, there were two organizations actually, the Foundation Center and GuideStar. They both worked in similar areas, but slightly different ways in the nonprofit and foundation funding arena. And then they merged a few years ago into a new organization called Candid. You can go to candid.org, candid.org. The Lark. As soon as I got to the Lark, I had the opportunity to meet with the wonderful Joey Guastella at the Foundation Center, now Candid. And he walked me through and showed me step by step how to use the Foundation Directory online. Thank you, Joey. He's a wonderful guy and supporter of the Lark and of the arts in New York. And the Foundation Directory Online is an incredible tool. In addition to being probably the most robust in the world database of foundations and corporations that do sponsorships to nonprofits, grant opportunities, you can not only search for the organization you're looking for or your geographic area, but you can type into that search bar exactly what you want to do, and it'll pull up through keywords across the whole database to find things that are relevant to what you're doing. So if you're trying to fund, an indie theater production in Philadelphia, you can type, independent theater or playwriting grant, Philadelphia. If there's something that the play is about, you can write that. And it will pull up for you based on funding that has been awarded by these organizations in the past and the keywords in their mission. It'll pull up and rank those for you. So it suddenly becomes vastly easier to find organizations that might work for you. In terms of using their database, so there is a paid membership for companies, for organizations. So a company like the Lark, would have to pay our monthly membership fee to use the foundation directory online. If you're an individual and you're using their search for individual grants, it is $99 a year. I think it's $99 a year or like $19 a month if you do it month to month. But that's still expensive. I don't know that I have $99 that I'm just going to be able to throw on my credit card for the foundation directory online. So another resource, like unions, that I'm going to encourage all of us to return to are libraries. Candid has its main office is in Lower Manhattan. I don't know if, and I suspect they're not open right now because of COVID, but in non-COVID times, Candid's office is, first of all, one of the most beautiful buildings and offices in the city of New York. It's right on New York Harbor. It overlooks the Statue of Liberty, Ellis Island, Governor's Island. It's gorgeous. And you can just go. You don't have to make an appointment. They have their library on site, and you can go, in addition to all the books that they have on grant writing and on foundations, you just sit down at one of their computers and you can use their entire database for free. And you can just stay there, spend an afternoon. I've done it. I send all of my, when we had our apprenticeship program before COVID, I sent apprentices down there. It's an amazing resource. But you can also access their database via your local library. If you go to candid.org/find us, and that's find-us, or if you go to the Candid website and click the Find Us button, it'll show you the different places where you can access the Candid database in the foundation directory. And they have a feature where it's like a map where you type in your zip code and it'll pull it up for you and show you exactly where you can have access. So I'm just quickly pulling it up right now. I live in Brooklyn, so I'm typing in my zip code, and immediately it's showing me, what is that? That is the Brooklyn Public Library right at Grand Army Plaza. They have access to it. You go there in person and you can access it for free. And it's showing me all the other places. They've got access in Staten Island, in Jamaica, in the Bronx, in New Rochelle, Yonkers, Levittown, Long Island, in Elizabeth, New Jersey. And right now I'm actually in California. So let me try looking up here. And immediately there's one 3 miles away. There's one in the San Mateo Public Library, Oakland, San Francisco, Berkeley. So they're really, truly all over the place. Some of them are outside of the United States. I know that they have locations in Australia, for example. I suspect that they have some in Mexico and South America as well. But it's an amazing, amazing resource. And the features that they have are so robust. I think you'll find them incredibly useful. It shows you how much money they awarded last year, how much money they've awarded over the course of their entire career. If the information is available, they'll have a map of the US and it'll be color coded to show you what states and locations they've supported. And it's just a really wonderful resource. Another way to help you find, what to Google or even what to look up in the foundation directory online, look at who funds organizations that you love or that you think are sort of similar in scope and mission to what you want to be funding. So for the Lark, something that I did very shortly after I took over as director of development in January of 2020 is I looked at what theaters that season were producing Lark developed plays. And one theater company in New York City, very nearby us, happened to be producing, I'm pretty sure, 3 of their 5 productions that season in their 2019-20 season were Lark developed plays. And so I grabbed the playbill on my way. I mean, I grabbed my playbill and I kept it, and I went back to my desk and I looked through the list of funders, and I saw, okay, so here are folks who already fund us. That's great. And here are folks who I haven't heard of. But if they're funding this company and this company is so closely aligned to what we're doing, I want to reach out to them, and I want to, at the very least, research and look up and see if I can find a way to get in touch with them or see what opportunities they have. And a lot of the time that also counts for individuals, where you can look and see, oh, okay, interesting. This same person's name pops up, at Playwrights Horizons and MCC and the Public. And I'm gonna look into that person and see if I know anybody who knows them, if I can invite them to come and see my reading or whatever it is. And I just listed 3 big companies. But if you're an indie artist and you're producing something small, I've done it for my own, indie ventures. My off Broadway productions of my plays, where you look and see, okay, at this theater, who are other folks who've supported plays at this theater? Or here's a company that I really love that's a small indie company, who supports them? And then I'll take that information, either look it up on Google, or I'll go right to the foundation directory online and I'll cross-enter it there. Another option for project support, and I mention it last because it is the hardest for me to say the words, sponsorships that are corporate sponsorships. And I struggle with the idea of corporate sponsorships and corporations, because it's not just that they're doing it out of the kindness of their hearts. It's what's in it for them. They're sponsoring you because they want to, have some appearance or some impact in the community. There's a quote from a CEO of ExxonMobil. It's a famous quote from the 70s. It was up in the museum, the new museum on Bowery. And it was, if corporations are to continue to thrive in cities, they need a more socially lubricated environment. And the best way to socially lubricate is through arts and culture organizations. So they donate with the intention of getting people in communities to be, have a more favorable opinion of them. Beware when real estate developers are doing it in your neighborhood, because it means they're probably trying to gentrify and destroy your neighborhood. But other corporations, locally, I'm sure there are plenty of like mom and pop shops and other, small credit unions locally that you can reach out to or look and see what they've sponsored. In sponsorships, I feel like in communities, I normally see it where it's like, someone's like local Little League team will be sponsored by some local company. But also it's worth looking into for theater as well. If you're looking to produce a project. Oh, good, Nikki, I'm glad. And Nikki, you can always reach out to me anytime. I miss you and always love talking to you about your incredible work and projects that you are pursuing. So yes, corporate sponsorships. Something that's tough for the Lark about corporate sponsorships is that we're not a producing theater, so our visibility isn't always that helpful to corporations. It makes sense for Delta Airlines to give $500,000 to Shakespeare in the Park because a ton of people are going to see that. It doesn't necessarily make sense for them to give $500,000 to an organization that's all development. And so, I wouldn't go to Delta Airlines and expect them to give $500,000 to a production that you are mounting, at a small theater. But you might find a local bank or a local company that will. And sometimes it's in kind as well, where, you could find, and I've done this before, you reach out to your local print shop and you say, can you print my programs for me for free? Can you print my scripts for me for free? The call scripts for the stage managers, the rehearsal reports. Can I print all of those here for free? And you'll get credited in this way in the program. And, for a lot of companies, they'll totally do that. If it can be articulated like, I'm doing this in the community, it's for the community, and here's a way that you can give back and be visible to the community. So that's corporate sponsorships. I'm going to pivot now to fiscal sponsorships, which is something totally different. No questions thus far. That's great. That's okay. I will just keep talking really fast then. And we had one question submitted in advance. So no questions thus far live, but thank you and shout out to the individual who sent a helpful question about where to look when you're researching for grants. I've just spent a lot of time explaining that. I hope I've answered your question. Fiscal sponsorship is when a nonprofit company sponsors your production, not necessarily by giving you money, but by lending you, in a way, their nonprofit status. So if you have a nonprofit organization that, let's say, they say, we don't have the staff capacity or financial capacity to give to your project with our, organizational resources, but we recognize your project as being in line with our mission and values. So what we're gonna do is we'll fiscally sponsor you. So you can apply for grants and go out for corporate sponsorships, solicit donations from individuals as a project that's fiscally sponsored by insert organization here. And then that way, if individuals donate, their donations will be tax deductible. A lot of foundations will only give grants to nonprofits. And so if you are just an independent person and you're like, I'm just trying to put on a show, in order to apply for or qualify for grants, you might need to be a nonprofit. That's not always the case, but it is a lot of the time. So you might need a fiscal sponsorship. The most common one that I see in the LARC community is Fractured Atlas. It's very common. They have it down. They're a well-oiled machine. They do a great job. You're going to have a fairly easy time if you're getting a fiscal sponsorship through Fractured Atlas, because this is one of the things that they do and that they do best, is they exist to help small independent artists and organizations have access to funding and to resources. Okay, I will address, there is a question that's come in. I'll just finish up this on fiscal sponsorship. Something that's very common with fiscal sponsors is that they will ask for a cut of what you are doing. So of the money you're raising. So there's, Fractured Atlas. I don't want to speak for what their percentage is. I also know there's NYFA, New York Foundation for the Arts. They are a fiscal sponsor. And what's very common that I see is 6 to 10%. So if you're raising a small budget, that might not feel like a lot. If you're trying to raise, $1,000 to mount your very minimalist production, or to mount a 29-hour reading or something, that becomes $60 to $100. If you're trying to raise, 10 grand even for a production, suddenly that's $600 to $1,000, which in the grand scheme of things, that's really a lot. So instead of having to raise 10,000 for your budget, suddenly you have to raise, 11 or 12 in order to cover the costs of the fiscal sponsorship. Something else that's very helpful is you could potentially solicit fiscal sponsorships from companies that you've worked with in the past or that you know. If there are friends that you have who have theater companies or work at theater companies that have 501c3s, you can reach out, ask, do you do fiscal sponsorships? Are you amenable to the idea of doing fiscal sponsorships? The last time that I had a play of mine that I self-produced, I partnered with a theater company that I have worked with a lot in the past before. And, I asked them and we worked out our deal, and it was totally agreeable to both of us. It was less money. It cost less for me than it would have for me to, get a fiscal sponsorship through an organization that does fiscal sponsorships, as part of its organizational mission. And, it was really great. Suddenly I had access to the resources and revenue streams that I wanted. Okay, here is a question. How does one make an offer like that? And I'm presuming that this is for corporate sponsorships. How does one make an offer like that without sounding like taking advantage of local artists? I feel like there's a very fine line when asking for those kinds of trades. Yeah. So interesting. I don't know that I would. I guess what I'm trying to suss out with the question is, in terms of taking advantage of local artists, is it that the corporation would be taking advantage of you, or that when you're asking, you're feeling like you're taking advantage of them? Because what I'm not advocating for is that, that we do the go to the local artist and treat them like they're going to sponsor you and be like, hey, will you provide this labor for me for free, and in exchange you'll get experience and all the visibility that this black box theater in the basement in the East Village can buy, which we've all done and we've all been asked for. But what I mean, I'm thinking very specifically with companies. And if you're concerned about feeling like you're taking advantage of companies, I wouldn't, because a company is a company, and it is a for-profit institution. Their design is to make money. And yes, you might find a person at a mom and pop store, for example, who is they're willing to spend a little money because they like what you're doing and they want to give back to the community, in which case let them do that. But then a lot of the times also you've got to trust that they think that what they're doing is good and valuable for their business. And it is. If we take the print shop scenario that I said, where you go to like your local, print and package store, and you say, can I print here, these things for free, X number of pages for free, and I'll, give you billing in the program or whatnot, that might be seen as very valuable to them. And, for something that ultimately wouldn't cost them a lot of money. And that's the mom and pop example. There's also the bigger corporate example, which is you go into Target, or you call the manager at your local Trader Joe's. A common one also is like beverage sponsorships. If you're having a reading or an opening night party and you want to call like a local brewery and say, hey, can you donate? Would you be willing to donate X number of cases of beer or wine, and we'll serve that at our party, and we'll put up whatever sign, or we'll work out the way that we'll recognize that contribution of yours. In-kind gifts, if they're from a company, I would say trust the company. If the company is going to find that it's not advantageous for them, they're probably going to say no. And if they're going to say yes, trust that it's advantageous for the company. If we're talking about local artists, yeah, if the question is, are they taking advantage of you? That's sort of a question for you to discern. If you're going to a neighborhood that has a ton of foreclosures, and you're saying to the local Wells Fargo, hey, can you sponsor this theater production in this community? And they're suddenly like rubbing their hands together saying like, oh yes, thank goodness, because everybody there hates us. I probably shouldn't have name dropped Wells Fargo like that, but whatever. The Wells Fargo wagon is great. And that's up for you to decide. I don't know if anybody knows Major Barbara by George Bernard Shaw. It's a great play. That is, in my mind, about fundraising and about this question of fundraising ethically. In Major Barbara, she works for the Salvation Army. It's the early 1900s, and her like long lost father comes around to offer to give a huge donation, and he's an arms dealer and a weapons manufacturer, and so she's sort of horrified. Oh my God, how can the Salvation Army accept money that is just clearly blood money like this from the burgeoning military industrial complex? And that's a thing that, as director of development and as an individual artist, I wrestle with all the time. What money are you willing to turn away? I find that for me, the best way to avoid feeling like I'm in those situations is to be discerning about what money I'm asking for. So I won't go to an organization or a company that I feel like, you know, I don't feel comfortable with. I don't think that, what they do is okay. There are plenty of banks that I've decided that or pulled my business from because I think what their investments aren't okay. So that's up for you to decide. But then also, if you're asking for trades with local artists, yeah, no, I get that, and I that's not what I was talking about. So I'm not saying, for example, that you ask like your friend of a friend who's a graphic designer, will you design my poster for me for free, and I'll give you a shout out. Some people feel that's valuable, and sometimes if it's a friend, like that might be a way that they can support your company and your art, and that they would want to. Maybe they can't afford to give you a donation, but they still want to support you as a friend. And so, like, those kinds of conversations aren't bad to have if you're not looking to take advantage of someone. Obviously, not that like you can't have the impact of taking advantage of someone, but um, you know, if it's someone you're close to, and it can be that you're asking for help or support, and you have that kind of relationship, like I think that there are ways that you can say it where you can frame that, like, I'm not trying to take advantage of you, and of course you can say no and there will be no love lost. But if it's someone you don't know and it's just a local artist and you're saying, hey, can you lay down this ocarina track for me for free music for my production? Yeah, that's not something I personally would do, and not what I was talking about when I was talking about local organizations. I hope that answers the question. And if there's any follow up to that, let me know. Someone's going to read the play now, Major Barbara. Well, I George Bernard Shaw, old dead white guy, but cranky socialist. So I have a soft spot in my heart for old dead white guys who are cranky socialists, and for living cranky socialists. So, okay, last thing I want to talk about. And this is sort of tangential, but it's information that I didn't fully appreciate or understand until I was director of development and until COVID hit. Because COVID hit, and in the short term, the big picture economy started to tank. And actually, even big picture economy feels not correct. Wall Street, the rich people started to feel it, in a way that now they think, oh, well, it's totally fine. And what's wrong with all these people who aren't wanting to take our underpaying jobs? But suddenly it seemed like all of this money dried up, including from foundations. And I was really shocked, always conscious that everything is fair and equitable. Absolutely. I was shocked at the time when suddenly foundation money was drying up in certain places, because I felt like this is the time when our communities need support the most. What good is a charity if you can only support people when like times are good? Literally, what's the point? And I want to talk through a little bit where the money in philanthropy comes from. So I'm going to start with government agencies because it's the easiest. It comes from taxes. And this is something that I think you'll see if you're looking at the foundation directory online. There are foundations and organizations that engage in philanthropy overseas and in other countries, but it's not the same. The philanthropic sector doesn't really exist in other countries in the way it does in the United States, because many other governments fund the arts and humanities as seriously as they deserve to be funded. And so, since in the US, government funding for the arts is so pitifully below where it should be, foundations and nonprofits are, we exist, nonprofits and foundations exist to sort of fill those gaps. And in some ways, that's beautiful. A government can't, address every single need in every citizen's life. And so communities gathering around and saying, here's something that we've identified as a way that we can improve our community. We're going to start a local nonprofit to address that need. That's beautiful. That's not what I'm talking about here when I'm talking about where foundations, get money from. When you're talking about big foundations, the money from those foundations comes from individuals, a lot of the time, families, and investments. And so during the beginning of the COVID crisis, for example, when suddenly foundations were being very tight with the purse strings, it's because the stock market was down and all this foundation money is tied up in the stock market. So that's something that's challenging, but then also something that is tough about the philanthropy sector when it comes to trying to fundraise for your art is that if foundations are funded by money from individuals, families, and investments to fill the gaps that are left by, underfunding from the government, that means that priorities for funding come from rich people. That what gets funded gets to be decided predominantly by wealthy individuals, families, and, investors, stakeholders. So that's just the way things are structured in the US. And so if you are looking to get funding from a, private family foundation or from even, a really big foundation, you've got foundations that are named after, titans of industry of, decades past, the Ford Foundation, the Mellon Foundation. These are, institutions that have a lot of really wonderful things about them. Both of them fund the LARC. But, also it's important to recognize, where does this money come from? What are the structures in place that are designed to, support individuals and artists and organizations like mine or like what I'm trying to fund? And what are the ways in which they're also trying to benefit themselves and the interests of the funders and where the money comes from? So all of this is to say that, like corporate sponsorships, sometimes even with foundations, you want to look at what their mission is and who they fund, and ask yourself, is this something that I want to pursue, funding from these people? Also, you might decide for yourself, I'm willing to take money from anyone. It is better that I have this money and am spending it on what I want than that the Koch brothers have this money, for example. Maybe I shouldn't name drop the Koch brothers, but I don't care. Koch brother, one of them's dead. So, you might say that and justify that to yourself. Yes, I've shocked Jennifer now. Sorry, Jennifer. But another thing that's worth doing, to the point, is looking at the missions of these foundations and seeing if there are ways in which, when you're writing to them or reaching out to them, that you could tailor the pitch of your project to their priorities. And sometimes that won't feel good to you. And sometimes it'll feel fine. And you'll say, yeah. This organization has a clear, commitment to, empathy. This organization is all about empathy and civic engagement. And my play that I'm going to produce, I believe that by bringing audiences together in the theater, it is, an empathy building experience. And playwriting, I'm imagining how other people will act in situations. It's all about empathy. I can present it in that way. And civic engagement. The theater is a place of civic engagement. Ancient Greece, blah, blah, blah. And, you can frame what you're doing in a way that appeals specifically to what this funder is trying to do. So that's a little grant writing tip. And by little, I mean it took me 10 minutes to describe. So I've been on for 50 minutes. Jennifer, Haley, how am I doing? Have the people had enough? Have you had enough?
Hi. I think that's a really great place to end. Do you have any final words of wisdom for folks as they're kind of writing these narratives, these grant narratives of just any tips for surviving?
Tips for surviving. I'm barely doing it, friends. I have no tips for just basic survival. But For grant writing, I do. There are some small grant writing tips in previous editions of Nora's Guide, going back to the spring. And then here are 2 tips for not grant writing, but getting help with grant writing that I can offer. One has been reach out to me, reach out to the Lark, reach out to nonprofit organizations that you have a relationship with or that you admire. You can reach me right now. You can reach me at my Lark email address, Nora, Nora, at larktheater.org. And if for whatever reason you can't find me there, you can hit me up on my personal email. I'm giving it to you right now. It is my name, Nora, Nora, Brigid, Brigid, Monahan, Monahan, @gmail.com. Email me. Helping artists, supporting artists working on their grant narratives and trying to help connect artists to funding opportunities is the single most fulfilling part of my job. And it's a gift to me. Please reach out if you have questions or need help with that. And I would venture to guess that there are many other development directors out there who feel the same way. So if you are in New Dramatists, for example, you might want to reach out to Tiffany at New Dramatists and ask, for some questions. If there's another company, a smaller company even, and they have a development associate or development manager, reach out to that person. And sometimes they might say, I don't have the capacity to help you rewrite this, but I'll get a coffee with you and we can talk. Or I'll send you a grant that I've written and you can see how I formatted it and how to use that as a jumping off point. Believe me, if you're working in development in the arts, you're not doing it because you love rich people. You're doing it because you love artists. If I loved rich people, there are many other jobs I could get where I could, scratch that itch. But that's not the itch I have. So reach out and ask if you need help or want advice. With that, thank you for coming to Nora's Guide to Kicking Ass and Applying for Grants. Thank you, everybody who's reached out and followed these in the past. Hit me up if you need me. I'm always going to be here for you. Thanks, comrades.
Thanks, Nora. All right, how do I end this? How do I stop this? Okay. End meeting for all. Bye.